In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Today, the 3rd of the blessed Coptic month, Abib, and the 10th of July, we celebrate the feast of Saint Cyril of Alexandria. Saint Cyril of Alexandria is the 24th Patriarch of the See of St. Mark. And the same day, when we celebrate his feast, we celebrate also the feast of Saint Celestine, the Bishop of Rome, who was a Bishop of Rome from the year 422 to the 432. Saint Cyril was, and he also supported Saint Cyril in his defense of the Orthodox faith against the Nestorians' heresy. And that's why the church, the feast on the same day. But we will focus today about Saint Cyril. Just I give you a brief about his life, his writings, and then we will have 4 lessons that we learn from his life. Saint Cyril was born in Egypt in the year 375, and his mother is a sister of Saint Theophilus, the 23rd Patriarch. She and her brother came as children to Alexandria, and they were under the care of Saint Athanasius the Apostolic. And when they grew up, the Pope Theophilus, he be consecrated, and then after that be in the clergy and the Patriarch, while his sister get married, and her son is Saint Cyril. That's why Pope Theophilus took care of of Saint Cyril and prepared him rightly from the beginning. He took care of his study. He took care of him to study theology in the Theological School of Alexandria. And when he was 20 years old, he sent him to spend 5 years in the Shehit, in the desert, the western desert of Egypt, under the guidance of Saint Serapion the Great, who was a disciple of Saint Macarius. After that, he returned to Alexandria, and in the year 404, he was ordained a priest in Alexandria, and he was famous with his preaching and with his pastoral care. When Saint Theophilus passed away in the 15th of October 412, the people, all of them agreed to ordain him to replace Saint Theophilus. And 3 days after Saint Theophilus passed away, Saint Cyril was ordained as Archbishop of Alexandria on the 18th of October 412. His patriarchate extended from 412 till 444, about 32 years. And he was 38 years old when he became the Patriarch of Alexandria. And we can divide his patriarchate into 2 periods. The first one between 412 till 428. 428 is the year when Nestorius became the Patriarch of Constantinople and the beginning of the spread of his heresy. And the second part is between 428 till 444. In the first period, Saint Cyril focused on his pastoral care to his people, do pastoral visits, and his writing, he started to write commentaries in all the books of the Bible. Whether he completed or not, we are not sure, but at least some of his writing remain. We'll speak about it when we come to the writings. And also, he wrote festal letters, as it was the custom of the Bishop of Alexandria to send it to define the beginning of the Feast of Resurrection and also the beginning of the Great Lent. It was a chance for pastoral message to be sent to the people. And also he took care of dealing with the Arianism, which is remained until this time, and he wrote also to explain about the Holy Trinity and defend the divinity of the Son and the divinity of the Holy Spirit. In year 428, when Nestor became the Patriarch of Constantinople, and then spread his teaching, his heretical teaching, Saint Cyril, he led the Christian world to defend the Orthodox faith against this heresy, and it took most of his time either in responding, communicating with Nestorius, writing against his heresy and explaining the hypostatic union and the incarnation of the Logos, and also prepare for the Council of Ephesus, which the Ecumenical Council, which was held in the year 431, and also dealing with what after the council, like the reconciliation with John of Antioch, which happened in the year 463. The writing, which took, and he wrote many letters in the explanation and also defending the Christian faith against the origin of the teaching of Nestorius until his departure in year 444. The writing of Saint Cyril, which we divided it, his commentaries on the books of the Bible, what we have now and also translated in modern language, his commentary on the Gospel of St. John, which is, we have complete the work, commentary of the Gospel of St. Luke, and his commentaries on the 5 books of Moses, which is in the books under title Worshipping in the Spirit and the Truth, and the Glaphyra, and also his commentary on the book of Isaiah, and fragments of his comment on the Romans, Hebrews, and the Gospel of St. Matthew. The dogmatics writings, it include his writing about the Holy Trinity, either the dialogue or the treasure, and also his writing on the incarnation, and Christ is one. For the letters, we have 88 letters of Saint Cyril. Some of them, of course, all of them are important, but some of them have special importance, like his second letter to Nestorius, which was considered a standard of faith in the Council of Ephesus and also in the Council of Chalcedon, where he explained the meaning of the hypostatic union in his response to Nestorius. And the third letter, which was sent to Nestorius after the Council of Alexandria condemned and excommunicated, and the importance of this letter that he elaborate of his explanation of what he did in the second letter and attached with it the 12 anathema. And also his letter to John of Antioch, where he receives the reconciliation. And his 55 letters, or like 55, which is explanation of the Creed. We have also the Fistal letter. We have from them 29 letter, which is more pastoral in their language and pastoral in their topics. There are some sermons which is skipped, especially the sermons which he did in Ephesus, and his famous sermon about Theotokos. I will identify 5 lessons which we learn from the life of Saint Cyril. Number 1, the importance of the good preparation and the theological study. Saint Cyril is Saint Cyril because of his upbringing, how Pope Theophilus took care of him and prepared him. and also what was available in Alexandria at that time, like the theological school, with all the saints was run this school, like Didymus the blind, and how he benefited from this strong school, which helped him to study and to lead the Christian world, which emphasize the importance of the theological school. We have in the diocese St. Cyril, St. Athanasius and St. Cyril Theological School under the leadership of His Grace Bishop Cyril. And this is very important project because without good and strong theological study, we will not be able to explain our Christian faith and also to defend against the heresies. Yes, in our days, maybe Nestorianism is not that strong, but there are other things. We are living in very intellectual society when there are many thoughts existing and many religions, secular thoughts, different values, and how we be able as a church to defend our faith against such kind of intellectual challenges without having a very strong theological school. It's strong in faith and strong in scholarship, to be scholarly preparing people. That's why we care for accreditation. Why we care for accreditation? Because we want to use a standard which is used in the society in providing a theological teaching. Not only the content, but also the methodology, and also the way which is to be presented. But we notice in the upbringing of St. Cyril is not only that he studied theology and philosophy, but also Pope Theophilus sent him to the desert to spend 5 years to learn spiritually, to learn from the wisdom of the hermits and the leader of monasticism in the desert, which it shows also in our church. We don't separate between theological knowledge and spiritual life. They come together, and also to be very important, because it's the right theologian, as St. Gregory, the theologian, defined the real theologian is to be strong in his or theological study and also in his spiritual life. Secondly, is how to face heresy. We learn from St. Cyril when he faced the challenge of the teaching of Nestorius. He didn't jump in attacking or refuting his teaching, but he spent from 9 months to 1 year. And a great person like St. Cyril, to spend, say, the 8-9 months just reading what was circulated from the teaching of Nestorius, because Nestorius, as a Patriarch of Constantinople, has many scribes who wrote his sermons and make copies by writing and circulated it in different places. And many reached to Egypt and reached the monks. So he took this and took his time to read it carefully, to differentiate between just some mistakes in some sentences or between a real heresy, or a real thought, real concept with a deviation, because heresy means a new teaching. And it was for him is not ritual things, what he don't like to say Theotokos in the liturgies, but what was behind it, but more important, that is behind it is a concept, a thought, that is he believed that is in Jesus Christ there are two persons, the divine person and the human person. And he considered that is Saint Mary, she is the mother of the human person. So we should not call it the mother of God. We can call it the mother of man, the mother of Jesus, the mother of Christ, but not the mother of God. And Saint Cyril, of course, he considered this is the major point in the Nestorius heresy. And he prepared a response from the verses of the Bible and also from the patristics, sayings, the fathers. And he included the Greek father and the Latin father, a father who wrote in Greek, the father who wrote in Latin, and prepared the famous dossier. But he also believed to have a practical results. It's not just to express frustration or to prove that Nestorius is wrong or to respond to him, but he needs practical results, how to protect the church. That's why he understood what are the center in the church, which you have to address them and reach out to them. He knew that Nestorius is a patriarch, and a patriarch cannot be tried by another patriarch. It needs councils, and the council attended by the patriarchs of the other sees. So he reached out to Rome. He sent the dossier of the Bishop of Rome, Saint Celestine, and he waited until Rome studied and considered the teaching of Nestorius as heretical, and he condemned it by the council of the bishops in Rome under the Pope Celestine. And also, he felt the importance of his own bishops. That's why he gathered the bishop under his see, and they studied, and there was a synod decision of the Synod of Alexandria to condemn the Nestorius, which was sent him in the third letter with anathema. He also knew that as a council to condemn the Nestorius cannot be convened without the emperor, because this was the system at this time. So he not only understands the system within the church, but also resistance in the world that he was living. And that's why the emperor at that time was Theodosius. And he sent to him the dossier to tell him about it. And so he can understand the dangers of this teaching. But he knew that is in the palace, not only the emperor, there are people of influence who can affect the emperor. And one of them was the older sister of Theodosius, Pulcheria. And that's why he sent it to her too, the dossier. He knew also Nestorius is a patriarch, and he has his own people in Constantinople. And that's why he also cared for the people of Constantinople to understand, especially because Nestorius was against the title Theotokos, and because the love of people to Saint Mary, that's why many of the people was against his teaching. So to achieve what he achieved, he did a good preparation, study, prepare a response, but also reach out to other sees, to other patriarchs, and also reach to the emperor. And that's why when he started his fight against this heresy, he never came back with all the difficulties he faced. And that's why he was successful at the end. The third lesson which we learn, that is Saint Cyril, he also was committed to keep the canon. He was a man of a church, and he respected the canon of the church. So he knew that is the Council of Constantinople, the Ecumenical Council, issued a canon, Canon 2, which prohibit any bishop to interfere in the diocese of another bishop. So when Nestorius started his teaching, this teaching was limited to Constantinople, and the news about this new teaching reached St. Cyril. But he felt he cannot interfere in another diocese, in another see. But he waited until this teaching circulated into his own church, in own diocese, especially among the monks, and then he started to respond. That's why he wrote a letter to the monks. He started in his Fistel letter. St. Cyril also knows the canon of the church. That's when there is something happening in another diocese, the bishop has first to communicate with the bishop of this diocese. That's why he started by communicating with Nestorius. He sent to him to tell him that I'm advising you. It is out of my care, calling you to follow up in keeping the faith which we received from our fathers. Unfortunately, he was not successful because Nestorius refused, but at least he reached out to him firstly. When he found there is no response, then he go and he found there is no way except through ecumenical councils. Also, we notice that in his communication with Nestorius, he always addressed him with all the title of respect as a patriarch. Even while he writing to him to refute his teaching and to prove his teaching is wrong, but he never told him you are heretics, named him names, but always with full respect, until the Council of Ephesus excommunicated Nestorius. Then he didn't refer to him or address him as a patriarch. So the canon of the church does not give the right of any person to say this person heretic, this person not heretic. It have to be done in the canonical way, in the right ecclesiastical way. The fourth lesson, that is how St. Cyril is giving us the example of pastoral care. Yes, the defender of faith is against Arianism or Nestorianism, took a lot of his time. But he didn't forget that he is a patriarch, he is the bishop of Alexandria, and he is responsible for people. Yes, defending the faith is part of this responsibility, but it's the only things. But you have to make pastoral visits, you have to address other issues which people are facing. That's why in Fistel letter we find the difference between the topics which he addressed in the Fistel letter, when it's more pastoral, more in a language which everybody can understand, than his language when he speak about high theological, some theological which he need to have a defined or refined expression. The fifth and the last one, that St. Cyril, we found him the balance. How he balanced between the deep theological study, but also the deep spiritual study. There is no contradiction between the two. Some people say the simple person is a person who does not go deeply in the knowledge. No, it is not the simple, this is naive. But there is no contradiction between to be deep in your spiritual life and also deep in theological study. If you do the study rightly and if you do the spirituality rightly, because spirituality without right faith is not right spirituality. The same also is knowledge. Theology is not just a knowledge, but it is a life, it's experience. And orthodoxy means the right faith and the right life. or the pure life, both of them. Also, he balanced between his care for keeping the Orthodox faith and his care for the unity of the church. Yes, heresy lead to the division, because excommunicated the Patriarch will lead to people will follow him. And now, till today, there is a Church of the East, which is still carries the teaching of Nestor or Nestorianism. But at the same time, he also cared for the unity. And we show it and how he dealt with the reconciliation of John of Antioch. No, John of Antioch, he refused to accept the Council of Ephesus, and he has his own council, and division happened, and there is no the full communion between the See of Alexandria and the See of Antioch was ended for a period of time. And Saint Cyril, in his care to restore this unity, he accepted, that is, if John of Antioch with his people to clearly condemn the teaching of that is, there are two persons in Christ, and Christ is one person, the divine person, who united with himself a human nature with a rational soul and with his own body, and also to condemn in very clear language the teaching of Nestorius. And he didn't insist that they have to accept the 12 anathema, because there was a resistance, especially from Theodoret, about the 12 anathema, which show us that is the real theologian is to understand what is the important, the basic, the essentials, and accepting even to give up some issues which are not very essential for keeping the unity of the church. That's why he wrote in his letter about this reconciliation in very joyful language, which expresses his joy for the unity. So Saint Cyril is a model for us to know what is the importance of a good preparation, good study, good preparation in understanding the theology and also understanding of the spirituality. It is a good example for us in how to face wrong teaching by understanding this teaching, preparing to respond to it, and also to prepare to achieve practical result, not just expression of frustration, like have to reach practical level. How also to keep the canon of the church, to be a real ecclesiastical person, and also not to neglect the other duties, pastoral duties, and lastly, have to balance between to deepen theology, deepen spirituality, defend the faith, and keep the unity of the church. May the intercession and prayer of Saint Cyril to be with us, and the glory be to God now and forever.